You okay?
All right. We are live from Sweet Science Boxing and MMA here in Hawthorne, California. I'm Chris, your boxing enthusiast, and with me, as always, the multifaceted creator-owner of the Sweet Science brand, professional boxing coach and insider, my friend, your host, Marco Trejo.
Man, that was awesome.
Nice introduction.
You want me to write a different one every time?
No, do that same one.
Do that same one
every time. Yeah. Can you follow me around?
I could just add into it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that introduction, Chris.
Of course. Happy to be here. We're back after taking a week off for Easter.
Yeah, that Easter break threw me off a little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah, but it was good. It was good to relax.
Yeah. But there was some boxing.
Yeah, there seems to always be boxing on now, which is great.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
For a boxing show.
Absolutely. some good fights. But so welcome back, folks. It's good to be back on the podcast. We got a special guest with us today. As you guys know here, we always try to bring some insiders from the game of boxing, some people with some real knowledge about the sport. Today we got Charles Bosecker. He's a professional matchmaker. He's worked with Top Rank, Golden Boy, 360 Promotions, and he's the head matchmaker for Fight Club OC, Roy Englebrecht Promotions. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah, it's Sunday, so I hope we didn't take you away from like your massage and your tan and your spa
you
day.
can tell I need a tan, that's for sure. And it was a hot day, but yeah, anytime, guys.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah. So, what should we start our topics?
That's a good question. We actually have a couple things to catch up on since we missed a week.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that we have to start with is the fact that the biggest fight that could be made in boxing is off. So, Canelo Alvarez has withdrawn from his May 5th boxing match with Triple G for the middleweight world championship.
Yeah, we need some sad music right now.
Let me see. I'm sure I could pull something up to.
Do you have that like? We've talked about that fight since the very first podcast, and every single one.
It comes up. Two things come up every podcast. It's this fight and Tyson Fury.
Yeah. Man, and
I heard he's back in the gym.
He is.
He's got
he's carrying logs.
Yeah, he's got Joshua or maybe Wilder, but probably Joshua.
But for Canelo though, the reason it comes up on it's really because there's a new development every time that we have this discussion. So last time, clenbuterol came up. We talked about what it was. We knew that there was a temporary suspension. There is a hearing on the 18th, but since our last podcast, he has withdrawn from the fight. They're still going to have the hearing. And in all likelihood, I imagine Canelo will be suspended, but I can't say that with certainty until after the hearing.
Well,
on the 18th.
I've heard 2 years suspension is possible, and then I heard that the reason that he withdrew was to lighten
the suspension.
Yeah, and then I heard 6 months.
Yeah, something it's got to be, right?
Yeah. So I mean, is there any definitive, well, not yet till the hearing, but is there anything more concrete than just speculation on when or the length of suspension?
Nothing more concrete than that. I mean, it is 2 positive tests. Tyson Fury, for his positive test, got a 2-year suspension. Of course, that's a different testing association, different athletic commission, and he tested positive for an anabolic steroid. This was not an anabolic steroid. This is a fat burning. Clenbuterol burns fat, as we said on the last show. So, I don't know. Perhaps the sentence is lesser, and it is the biggest name in boxing, which I won't say that has anything to do with it.
Two times he failed a test, right?
2 failed tests. Yeah, they're 2 consecutive. They were, I think they're only days apart. They're not like a...
Yeah, so he wasn't able to detox.
Speaking of detox, the whole, in my opinion, why this even is relevant and why this actually happened was because testing started a month sooner than the last fight.
Oh.
So remember, this is timing, right?
Yeah.
If you have any anabolic steroid, if you have any drug or anything in your system, it's a matter of time, right?
Of course.
Certain periods and lengths of time until it flushes out of your system. So I'm not saying that that's the case, but I find it ironic that they started testing a month early and now he's flagged for something. Right?
Sure.
So it's a little interesting, right? Because had that month gone by, it would have been out of his system.
Yeah. So they caught him off guard.
So they
right?
caught him off guard, and that's what happened. Now, I also, from what I understand as well, he withdrew because he wasn't able to supply, or he wouldn't submit a hair sample as well. That's what I've heard. I don't know for certainty, but I find it a little interesting because obviously the hair. I don't have hair, so I couldn't take it. But nothing would last very long on my head. But but in the hair follicles, right? A lot of things, can last longer, right? I mean, if you have longer hair, it's there longer than a month, right? So I find it very interesting.
So let me ask you something, because Triple G has committed to keeping the date.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say there's not really another name that's going to be a pay-per-view type fight, so this is probably going to have to move to regular HBO boxing. As a matchmaker, is there any match out there that you see who could Triple G fight on 1 month's notice, and make an entertaining go of it? Is there anyone that you're aware of?
I can't think of anybody
Yeah, it's
other
hard,
than
right?
Daniel Jacobs. But on 4 weeks' notice, I'm not too sure how willing he would be, or his promotional and organization would be, to take that fight. However, remember, the Daniel Jacobs fight is what actually transpired the Canelo fight to actually take place after that, because Golden Boy saw loopholes in Triple G's game, and that he's beatable now, and maybe he's aging, and things of that nature. So that is, in my opinion, why that fight even, the first Canelo Triple G fight took place, because of, the Jacobs fight.
Yeah.
I think Jacobs deserves a shot to get back in there with him.
I agree.
It would just be nice to, if it was a fair length of time for his camp, and to get ready for Triple G. It's the best fighter out there. You can't wing it. You can't cut corners on that.
Yeah,
So.
I think I agree in the sense that he gave Triple G, it was a disputed decision, I would say, not a controversial decision, but a disputed decision. And the one thing I will say, though, is that Danny Jacobs already has a commitment on the 28th, and he was fighting a final eliminator for the WBA title. So meaning if he wins the fight on the 28th, he becomes the mandatory for that belt either way. So it kind of makes more sense for Danny Jacobs to take his fight, right? Not having to fight Triple G on, a month's notice. Take the fight with Selecki, win, be the mandatory number one contender, and then fight Triple G later on this year, So it's kind of like, and, they also talked about, I guess they floated the idea of the other titleist at middleweight, who I'm a fan of, and for some reason his name just suddenly escaped me. Guys, you want to help me out?
Saunders?
Billy Joe Saunders, thank you. Yeah, so they also floated Saunders, but Billy Joe had
The other gypsy?
Yeah, he was coming off the hand injury, and realistically they couldn't have made that fight work anyway. So I'm not sure who he could possibly fight on May 5th. I'm really curious.
I think they're gonna have to drag somebody out and just to make a show. No, I don't think it'll be a fight of any significance.
No, no, it can't be, right?
Yeah.
Frank Warren, who is I believe the manager for Billy Joe Saunders, said he expects someone like Gary O'Sullivan or someone like that.
Yeah, I've seen that name dragged out.
Yeah, I've seen it a few
That's
times.
the guy with the.
Yeah, he looks like the circus strongman.
Yeah. Mustache.
Hey, but you know what? What an opportunity for whoever does end up taking that fight.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be somebody who most likely would never get this opportunity only because of the situation. So, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like a Rocky scenario.
You never know.
Right?
I mean,
this
you
is
never
turning
know.
into something really dramatic.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine
it could be a very big drama show.
Yeah.
You never know.
Could be something big.
Big drama show.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have to say, I love his sound bites. Triple G has the best sound bites. Big drama show.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
If you met that guy on the street, you'd be like, yeah, this guy's a dork, And then he just he'd waste you so fast.
He'd be destroyed. Yeah.
But he's a real nice guy. He seems like it. One thing I wanted to ask the whole Canelo Triple G thing is him testing positive. Maybe in the future we'll, depending how things transpire, how he fights in future fights. But do you think this is a big stain on his career? Because I almost feel like he's not at the end of his career, but he's still really young. But I feel like he's in the kind of getting out of the middle of his career.
Yeah. I mean, here's my feeling based on comments and things like that I've read. It is unlikely that this will tarnish Canelo's image if you are already a fan of Canelo. And if you're not a fan of Canelo, you will just use this as ammunition to say that he didn't deserve the achievements and accolades that he did serve. So I actually don't know that it changes his legacy in any way. I think it really just depends on, did you like him before or not? And if you liked him before, you probably still like him.
Right.
And if you weren't a fan of him, then you just dislike him even more than you did. And a lot of people are going to, the clenbuterol thing has come up many times in the past 2 years, and a lot of people are just going to lean back on clenbuterol as saying, hey, it's tainted meat. What can you do to avoid it? So
I mean, what an excuse. I mean, with all due respect, I mean, going back to the 1 month thing, to me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, come on, Canelo is a superstar, one of the biggest, greatest names in boxing today, and financially, I'm sure it shows in his bank account, right? So I find it really hard to believe that he just goes to the street corner and gets street tacos all the time. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would think maybe, especially knowing that one of the biggest and most anticipated rematches in boxing history, you're going to be eating street tacos on the corner. I just find that hard to believe.
In his defense, I will say street tacos in Mexico are really good.
I understand, completely understand, but a superstar athlete. I mean, you would think he's got a chef. He's got, they've got a whole list going down.
We mentioned
doctors.
Last time, isn't Gordon Ramsay like his personal chef?
What
the hell's going on? It's weird.
What I said last time is it's hard to imagine. If anyone has the resources to prevent this in the boxing world, I would imagine that Canelo Alvarez has the resources to prevent this. So if anyone could do it, he should be able to do it because he's at the pinnacle of the sport and he's making the most money. So
and this isn't the first time in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So they all know that this is an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I find it hard to believe.
Yeah. It just it doesn't sit well. It's a pretty lame excuse, but it is the excuse that they're sticking to. You know. I forgot what I was going to lead into, but I wanted to say so. Do you think that to speculate, is this a drug or a dietary supplement or a performance enhancing drug that he would have been doing in the past, been doing before Triple G? Is that something he would have needed? Just to speculate. Maybe as he was moving up in weight?
I think it's hard to speculate because it's a fat burning substance, and he's moving up from middleweight into this. Coming from 154 to 160. So I think a lot of things, another thing that you'll hear people say, something that I think even Max Kellerman has said in the media, is that it doesn't make sense for clenbuterol, trace amounts of clenbuterol, to be found in Canelo's system, given that he's actually trying to put on muscle mass. And that's kind of another argument that I think you'll hear from sympathizers.
But I've also heard, with all due respect to what you said, a lot of the times bodybuilders use that.
Sure.
So what happens is they use steroids to bulk up, right? To gain weight, muscle mass, what have you. Then they use that particular drug to trim down all the fat.
Gotcha.
So I'm not saying use steroids. All I'm saying is those types of things go hand in hand together with bodybuilders and people trying to bulk up and then cut the weight, cut the fat. So again, I'm not saying that he did, but it posts something a little interesting there as well, right? Because he has gone up in weight, right? Yeah. And he does look pretty darn bulky.
He's shredded.
Oh, yeah.
So,
he got ripped
for
fast.
Sure.
Right.
Being for me, being a fan of Canelo,
Yeah.
this definitely it hurts. You know.
Yeah.
It's it's to me it's a stain on his legacy.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, you want to think that a guy's doing it legit, you know, but I think it's a real stain. But at the same time, he's moving up in weight, so maybe I give him a pass. He's a little bit, you know.
You know,
it's disappointing.
His
for
career,
sure.
you know what may make his legacy suffer even more is if, let's say, Canelo suffers a 1 year, a 2 year, even a 1 year suspension, though. Okay, and the rematch with Triple G doesn't happen. Triple G's birthday, I believe, is today, right? So he's what, like 36?
Happy birthday,
Yeah,
Triple G.
Yeah,
Birthday,
happy
Triple-
birthday to Triple G.
Yeah.
Man.
His birthday's like today. He's 36. 2 years from now, Triple G may not even be fighting. What will hurt his legacy is the fact that he didn't get to redeem himself in the rematch, which many people believe he would have, you know, had he had a chance to go at Triple G again with the way that he ended the last fight and some of the advantages that he has in the matchup.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get a chance to do that, that could be unfortunate because he really could have gone out there and won, right? Which would, so that may be something that hurts your legacy even more. Is
Yeah.
you didn't get the win over Triple G.
Yeah, that also kind of brings me to the next question. But I almost feel that Golden Boy and Canelo would be happy with not fighting Triple G again. You know, not even taking the chance of, oh, yeah, they're supposed to beat him in the rematch from what experts say, but you know, what if they don't? And, I mean, the first fight, I gave it 2 rounds, you know, to Golovkin. He won 7-5 in my
Oh
opinion.
yeah, okay. Not you gave him 2 rounds, but he
No,
won
yeah,
by 2
yeah,
rounds.
he won by 2 rounds.
Okay.
You know, so to me, it's also an easy out to say, oh, tainted meat. I mean, you wouldn't want to stain your legacy, but still, you could
true.
just say, you know, that happened. Let's not fight him now.
It's kind of tough though, because look, if you're Canelo Alvarez, what are the 2 biggest fights of your career to date?
You know, Mayweather and then
And Triple G. And you didn't come out on top in either one. Everyone knows that you lost the Triple G fight, and you were dominated by Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, your legacy is already sort of has a
see,
few blemishes on
But
it.
the other thing,
Best fighters beat you.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other thing that makes me think that that there were, not that they intentionally would come out and say, hey, we took this, or intentionally
Sure.
want to get popped, but the other thing that makes me think they're okay with it is, yeah, a year from now, 2 years from now, Triple G's older, Canelo's still young,
The rematch then.
the rematch, and he has even more
Poses
advantage.
a bigger threat in a
Yeah,
couple of years than
exactly.
it happening now. I agree.
Yeah, so
Yeah, if they could delay it by 1 year,
Yeah.
it's a tremendous advantage at this point. That would be a huge
I
advantage.
think they signed the contract and were like, wait a minute, it's too soon.
Not only that, imagine it's 1 year and some serious tough fights later. So
Yeah.
it's 1 year and Danny Jacobs and Billy Joe Saunders
more
later.
miles.
And neither of those are easy fights. I couldn't even say with certainty that Triple G could actually beat Billy Joe Saunders. So
He would need to get on a motorcycle to chase that guy down. You know,
yeah. No, I feel you, but you know what I mean. Those are hard fights.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't
Hard
necessarily
fights.
come out on top. So it's a year and a couple difficult fights later, and possibly if he's able to fight Billy Joe Saunders and win, it's a year, a couple fights later, and for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. The whole situation just leads to speculation of a lot of different.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, look at us.
Topics.
We just created like 10 different
Yeah.
scenarios right now, just sitting here.
but yeah, they did it. They did it on purpose because they were like, we don't want to fight
But
him.
that's
this what
most likely what's
matchmakers
going to
do?
happen. Yeah, hey, that's kind of how it goes. You just start thinking and throwing stuff around, and next thing you know, the stars start aligning, and that's kind of how it goes, you know?
Oh man.
We just recreated the meeting that Canelo and
Yeah.
and Oscar had. Just like, how do we get out of this?
A reenactment starring Marco Trejo.
Yeah, because I mean, they can't just pull out and be like, you know what, we're pulling out. Why? Because we, you know, they could have faked an injury, but you know, maybe there's like, we need reasons, we need more time. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, there's so many different scenarios and situations that
Well,
could have happened.
Well, either way, the fans get robbed,
The fans get robbed.
which is always the biggest crime.
Yeah, it happens in boxing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we spent a third of the show on this one, so let's talk about some other fights real quick, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
Before we jump into it. So 331, March 31st, we had Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker.
It was a letdown.
Yeah.
For you, it was a letdown. How about you?
Let down.
Yeah. I think it was a letdown all around. Then I'll join that club. I'll join that one.
I was hoping to see more, out of Joshua, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple people are chomping at the bit now. I don't know if you guys heard, like
Everybody.
Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury both, after seeing that fight, said who they're kind of in a race now to get him in the ring first. Whoever gets him in there first, if he loses, then they lose a lot of cash. The other fighter will. So.
Right.
Well, I saw Joshua being a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And not pulling the trigger.
It's peculiar.
Yeah, and then off a Parker that wasn't being that aggressive anyways. He didn't use his size to his advantage. He didn't really set up any good finishing shots, any power shots. Yeah, he did look vulnerable. He didn't look that good, but he still won. He did what he was supposed to do. And I don't really think he's I don't think he means it. I don't think he's sincere when he says he wants to fight Wilder. Like, at the end when he called him out, he looked like he was like, let me just do this so they can leave me alone.
Well,
Before this fight, I would have thought for sure Joshua would beat Wilder. After seeing this last fight, now it's questionable, in my opinion.
so I had said that on the show a number of times that I thought Joshua would take it. And then I said two things could change my mind. And those things are Deontay Wilder's performance against Luis Ortiz, because it hadn't happened yet, and the way that Anthony Joshua performs against Joseph Parker. And based on those two performances, I'm kind of changing my mind now.
Right. I am too. It's in question now.
Well, we talked about a lot about the Wilder-Ortiz fight, and Ortiz was outboxing him to a point.
He was losing every round,
Yeah, until he got caught, until Wilder caught him.
And then started losing again after that.
So I think that's the thing that gives Wilder the advantage, is that kind of that element of surprise, and not just that, he wants to go out there and knock you out. He wants to go out there and just destroy you. And we didn't see that from Joshua. He didn't want to make an example of Parker. He didn't want to show the world that, hey, I'm the best heavyweight because I knock guys out of the ring.
So let me ask you guys something. You in particular, we were talking before about judges scoring and things like that. So did Joseph Parker only win one round? Is that do you guys feel like Joseph Parker only won one round in that fight? Is it just me that I felt like he probably could have walked away with more rounds than that?
I would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
You have to remember that, the guy sells out a stadium. What fighter over here sells out a 90,000
Nobody.
crowd stadium? So I hate to make that be the hot point here, but it's true. You're going into his backyard, 90,000, some odd sellout stadium, and champion, you have to really take it to him, and those judges know that.
But it's not right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, because even Deontay Wilder was up on the scorecards when he scored that knockout, and I don't think anybody saw that except for the three judges. Yeah,
Deontay Wilder was down. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's not right with judging in boxing. It's been pretty bad for a long time. So.
And there were a few more fights this weekend where it was the same way. So I guess my question is this: is there anything? And I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but I'm going to air it out, and maybe throughout the show, if you guys think of something, what could you do to make judging better? Like, what instruction could you give? What change could you make? Like, would it matter to have more judges? Does it matter where they are? Should we push more 10-10 rounds? Should we not be so opposed to even rounds? I kind of feel like, especially with some fights this weekend, like James DeGale and Caleb Truex, when you watch that fight, there's a number of rounds where I watch it and I go, I have no idea who won that round. Right? It's just too difficult a round to score. There's a lot of it's too hard. And why do I have to give someone a 10 and someone a 9?
I think that's a start right there. If there's no definitive winner on the round, you don't just give it to somebody just because okay, we'll give it to that guy, because
Right.
at that point you just pick a favorite or
Yeah,
or
at that
whatever.
point you're just saying,
His
I like
trunks
his
are shinier.
Yeah,
I know
like,
his corner
exactly.
guy,
I like
or-
his style more,
Yeah,
right?
I
I
like
like
his
his
style.
style more.
Yeah.
So I'll pick him.
Judges are human beings as well. I mean, it's a matter of what they like, what they're looking at, I mean, and then you got to think too, they're on different corners of the ring, so sometimes one judge is going to see something or a punch thrown that the other guy at the other corner didn't see, or the wince, or the rollback of the eye, or who knows that judge saw that he didn't, and he's like, that was definitive win for that guy, and because of that one shot that judge didn't see. So I mean, I agree that it's always been that way, right? And will it ever change? Who knows?
That's another question too. Is that really the best vantage point to judge from? Like, why aren't they watching it on a monitor?
Okay, so you guys have both been in corners of fighters, right?
Sure.
And you've obviously watched them on TV. I personally have seen something different ringside than I did watching on TV.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why that is, but sometimes you see things differently, right?
So maybe they
it's
should
not
have
always
both.
the same, but yeah, potentially. And I think the replay, being able to replay in the rounds, for example, last night I forgot which fight it was. There was a controversy on a headbutt or if it was a punch, right?
To Gale, yeah.
Yeah, and so they definitively, that when the judge says it, or the ref says that's a clean punch, they should be able to go back, right? And
That could be a big difference, because last night he ruled that a clean punch, but it was actually caused by a headbutt, and
Right.
had the fight been
And it was
stopped
clear
because of a
on
cut.
the replay.
Yeah,
They
had the fight
replayed
been
it.
stopped because of a cut, he would have lost.
Well, this is one thing I always wonder is every fight we watch on Showtime or HBO or whatever it is, there's always a punch stat, right? There's always a punch count.
Yeah.
That has no bearing on the score ever, And in amateurs, you do count points, for punches. I don't remember. I think the Olympics, like every time you get a solid hit, it's a point, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, that bothers me that you can get a punch count. You can see that somebody dominated by landing more punches, and then you'll get a completely opposite
Punch count?
or no, the scoring, from the judges.
Completely opposite scoring. But I think the punch count thing is a good point, because a lot of people see the punch count and they go, oh, I know who won that round because more punches landed in that round. But realistically, that's not how it works. One punch can win a round.
It's effective punches too, right?
Yeah.
So you can have a guy that's just pitter-pattering that's not effective punching, but it's high, picks up the punch count, and then you get that one bomb that the other guy lands on the 10 pitter-patters, and then that's the significant blow in that round, right?
That's another thing that makes boxing so interesting, because it's not just what you see from one vantage point is different from another vantage point. It's also what one person sees is different from what another person sees,
right?
Which is crazy.
I actually think that scenario that you described right there, which is volume punching versus effective punching, is probably the most difficult thing to score. And that's the scenario where I think more 10-10 rounds may make sense, because a guy lands 100 punches in a round, a guy lands 20, but it's 20 clean punches and 100 that are kind of on the elbows, on the gloves, and that's difficult, because you cannot say, having not felt the punches, do those 100 add up to the 20 that like it did do, and that's a hard round to score, and a dirty fight normally,
right.
And I think that's kind of like looking at Maidana and Mayweather. It's like a reckless abandon approach. I'm just throwing punches everywhere. You'll land some nice clean ones throughout the whole round. Every once in a while, you'll land a really nice clean punch, but I'm going to touch you the entire round, right? So it's kind of extremely difficult.
Well,
I don't know how to score
it makes me wonder what type of qualifications, what type of testing, what type of what these judges have to go through to become judges.
It's a good question.
Because this is there's a lot of variables there, and then if you're looking at some guy landed 10 good shots and this guy landed one monstrous shot, which one's worth more? I would love to be it's inside a commission meeting or something when they're figuring out what the judges need to be qualified.
Yeah, that's true.
Because some of them aren't qualified.
Well, for example, in California, as a matchmaker, we have a grade scoring system in order to match certain fights, right? So, I know that they have tools and they're utilizing different things to, eliminate certain fights that should or shouldn't take place. And what I'm getting at is I'm almost certain that they have stuff like that as far as the judging is concerned, how to
Yeah.
judge certain fights, because they are pretty particular with the matchmaking. I can only imagine on the judging side, at least for California, they have to be, there's standards and things that they have to meet, but I don't know exactly what those are. Yeah, that would be interesting to be in one of those meetings.
Yeah, because I know in baseball they have umpire school, right?
Yeah,
Right.
they must have judging school.
No, they
They-
do.
they
I know
have
that
to
they
have
go through
something.
things. Yeah, they have to, they all come together, and I'm sure there's different,
But you
things
know,
that are discussed. And
but you know what? I think that it'd be great if coaches, professional corners, boxers would be in on creating the criteria that the judges need to, or the requirements, creating the testing for them,
Yeah.
because they're the coaches and especially the fighters, they're the ones in the ring, and they're the ones getting screwed over when these guys make bad calls.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be great for them to kind of create a test or be in on it, give their opinion on what they should look for.
And I should clarify something before the YouTubers get after me. I understand that 10-10 rounds are permitted, but I would say that they are frowned upon and not utilized regularly in boxing
I
judging
hardly ever see 'em.
today. You very rarely see a 10-10 round. I get that that you can do it. I just think it's not considered common, and judges look to give someone a round in all circumstances.
I mean, put
so-
yourself in their shoes. I think they would rather give somebody a round. Like I said
Yeah.
a minute ago, I mean, we're all human beings. We all make mistakes, and we all favor certain things that we personally like. So
Yeah.
there's one, perhaps I like one particular move or punch that had taken place in that particular round, but to you, you're like, I don't care, that there was no significance to that, so that's where your round would be different than my round.
Yeah.
Because of something so dumb.
It's one of those things, if I don't clarify, people on YouTube are going to be like, you can score rounds 10-10.
Yeah.
Like, I know you can. It just doesn't happen. So, and then along those lines, Alexander Povetkin scored a devastating knockout over David Price, which makes him the WBA #1 mandatory contender, and the WBA, has given Anthony Joshua 30 days to now negotiate a fight with Alexander Povetkin, assuming that he does not first apply for an exception so that he can fight somebody else, such as Deontay Wilder. So Povetkin, who, if you were betting, I think was like a 10-1 shot. Now with the WBA is probably up to like 2-1 as the next opponent for Anthony Joshua, which means that in all likelihood, Deontay Wilder would be facing his mandatory, which is Dillian White. So, what do you guys think of those matchups?
I think they're good matchups. I think as much as I'd love to see Joshua and Wilder, it's still got to cook a little bit more. And those two opponents for each of those guys are those are good opponents that they'll showcase those fighters even more, and then just add more fuel to the I guess to the fans, wanting to see Wilder and Joshua. It's good. I think they should fight those guys.
How do you feel about it?
I agree with you on that. I mean, I think one of the biggest setbacks on whether the Wilder and Joshua fight, wasn't it that Wilder was wanting the fight here and Joshua was wanting it there, and that was kind of their dispute, or what?
He wanted 50-50. He was willing to
Okay.
okay. go over there, but he wanted
Okay.
half.
Yeah,
Got it.
he's still willing to go over there.
Yeah.
He actually said
Okay.
just this past week that he's totally
Okay.
willing to fight in UK.
And I'm on the what's his promoter's name? Frank Warren. Or
Eddie
someone?
Hearn is Anthony
yeah,
Joshua's
Frank Warren.
promoter.
That's
Yeah.
the other guy. Yeah. I'm on the. I agree with those guys. Joshua's
Oh,
filling in 100K, 90K people in the stadium.
I mean, that's unheard
We don't
of.
do
We
that
don't do
here.
that here
Yeah,
in the
so-
U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It should be there.
Yeah.
I mean, for
and
sure.
and Joshua should get the lion's share of whatever money they make. Because he's bringing the people. Wilder's just trying to crash his party. Basically.
Yeah, it's hard to justify 50-50 split.
Yeah, I think so.
in that
But
case.
backtracking a little bit on Wilder, from a coach perspective,
Mm-hmm.
what did you think stylistically about Wilder, not only in his last fight, I mean, mainly in the last fight, but all the other fights? I mean, he has this really unconventional type style, and perceived to a lot of people being pretty sloppy, which I'm a fan of his, right? He actually fought at the Fight Club OC hangar 5 years ago.
No way.
So I was sitting there with Wilder before he actually got really big. But anyways, I'm a fan of his, but it seems like in the more recent fights, especially like the last one, I mean, just got these crazy, loopy, wide, vulnerable shots that I think if Anthony Joshua was on point, that he would be able to capitalize. But we didn't see that in Anthony Joshua the last fight. So I don't know. But so going back to my question, what do you think of his style? I mean,
I think that's what makes him dangerous. I said that I've said from the beginning I think he can beat Joshua because he's throwing punches from different angles and odd angles, and it's a little bit unpredictable.
Right.
And so I think he can beat Joshua, but yeah, his style is really sloppy. He gets off balance once he hits you. He runs at you and he's way off balance. But I think that's his advantage. It's hard to train for unpredictability. You know, when you got somebody that's like traditional, hands up, just typical movements, then it's easy to counter that. But when somebody's all over the place, and you know what it reminds me of when I put a experienced boxer and I put a beginner in there with them, the beginner will almost always catch the experienced boxer on the first punch, almost all the time, because their first reaction is always like, it's natural, it's really quick, and they're almost like they're scared, so they're just like, they react really quick, and then they catch the experienced guy off guard who's thinking, oh, we're just gonna box here, he's gonna work the jab. No, the guy, the guy moves and then he rears back and comes back with something big.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So I think that's his advantage. And even though he was being outboxed by Ortiz, I think he was, and he showed a lot of grit by not getting knocked out. I mean, he took some monster shots. For the most part, he was waiting for the right time to open up, and I think he can do that with Joshua, wait for the right time to open up. And then I also think that Joshua's not a better boxer than Ortiz. But Wilder, totally sloppy, totally unconventional, but it works. I mean,
he's got 39 wins, 38 knockouts?
And he must have just insane power.
Speaking of power, okay, another question for you, Coach. You think of Manny Pacquiao, right? Mm-hmm. Short guy with these stocky legs, these big calves. I've always heard growing up in boxing and in the community, everybody always talks about, oh man, you got to have those big old legs. You got to have all the power is generated from your legs, but also your hips too, right? But you see a guy like Wilder, I mean, he's got chicken legs, right? I mean, and he's very, very light and tall, but for, the weight class, but he has this tremendous amount of power, and that kind of contradicts on what I've always been told, growing up in boxing, that all the power is in these, you got to do squats or you got to have thick calves and, big legs. But so that also comes down to that unorthodox.
Yeah.
And
well, I think, the tall guys, the lanky guys, they can generate a lot of velocity with their punch. Yeah, it's coming from downtown, and then by the time it gets to you, it's at full speed.
Yeah,
there's some good boxers. De La Hoya had chicken legs, coming up, and he had a vicious left hook. Gennaro Hernandez, another skinny chicken leg guy, he had a lot of knockouts. And there's a bunch of boxers you can name, but I've had that question before, and then I also give an example to the fighters, especially the tall guys, not to smother their punch, give it more room. I tell them, like, okay, if you got a pitcher on the mound, baseball pitcher, and this guy throws 100 miles an hour. Yeah, he throws 100 miles an hour from 60 feet behind the plate.
Right.
If you put him 10 feet, behind the plate, and he throws that ball, it's only going to go maybe 40 or 50. It needs room to get up to speed. So I think when Wilder's like rearing back, and he hits you.
Oh, and they're just whipping.
Yeah, a lot of velocity.
Well, it's crazy because sometimes, I mean, as a matchmaker, I've matched plenty of guys that are super fit and just look like they're going to absolutely destroy the other guy because of their mean old six-pack or their guns or what have you. But really, it does no justice for some, right? And so it's one of those personas that people, the normal fans will see two guys on the scale and be like, holy smokes, that dude's jacked. I'm sure he's going to knock the other guy out. But really, he can't break an egg,
I think
right?
Mike Tyson highlights kind of just ruined it for everybody.
Short, stocky.
Yeah,
Yeah. He was killing everybody, man.
One last comment on the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder debate is that Anthony Joshua definitely looked bad, but he looked bad against Joseph Parker, and the styles of those two fighters are extremely different. When I mean Joseph Parker and Deontay Wilder, and Deontay Wilder is, whether it's effective or not, he is sloppy and he does expose himself, and you can see it. And the comment that I made. When I used to defend, I said before I would always pick Joshua in that fight, and the reason I picked Joshua is simply because either one of these guys could knock each other out in the heavyweight division. Almost anybody can knock anybody else out. That's not really in debate. In my opinion, those guys are just extremely big, extremely strong men. If you catch someone right, they're gone. Right. My opinion is, though, if the fight has to go the distance, do we really believe that Deontay Wilder can outbox, can win rounds against Anthony Joshua? And I feel like he cannot. And the reason I say that is because Luis Ortiz clearly outboxed Deontay Wilder. It was not actually a competitive boxing match. That was Deontay Wilder's strength against Luis Ortiz's boxing skill. And Deontay Wilder's strength won. Could he do the same thing to Joshua? Absolutely, because he's dynamite. He's absolute dynamite. Could he sit there and win a 12-round decision the way that he did against Bermane Stiverne? I don't think so.
Especially going to Joshua's backyard.
Yeah, no,
he's got to knock him out.
They said Joseph Parker won one round, so you know what I mean.
There you go.
Here's one thing I've noticed about Joshua is that he gets tired really fast. He
has a lot of muscle mass, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's another thing, to the lanky body, the length that Wilder has. I think it'll serve him better for those later rounds, 5, 6, 7. When I see him putting combinations together, he'll gas after 2 or 3 combinations, and he starts to his legs start to stumble a little bit, and I think that's when Wilder can jump on him. I think you watch the 5th or the 6th round with Klitschko. I mean, Joshua was almost out of there.
Yeah,
he almost punched himself out.
Yeah.
Too.
Yep.
Can you imagine?
I think they were banking on it.
Yeah, and then the thing is that Wilder, when he sees you hurt a little bit,
that guy's a madman.
Like a dinosaur.
He just goes to eat. Literally,
it's all over the place. Yeah. Yep. So, but we'll see that fight. Hopefully we'll see that fight next year.
Okay.
I think we will. That'd be a great great start for next year.
So I think one more thing in the vein of sloppy fighters with no technique. Jarrett Hurd won a split decision over Erislandy Lara last night, which was extremely surprising to me, and I think probably to many people. Firstly, congratulations to Jarrett Hurd. I'm not taking anything away from him. He is effective in the same way that Deontay Wilder is effective. He's an undefeated, now unified champion, and is basically a shot caller at this point. But, man, the guy has, zero technique on it. He, fell over twice in the first round, just over his own feet, once a glove touch, once all the way to his butt. He's walking all around the ring. And when I say walking, I mean literally walking, not from a boxing stance. It's extremely unconventional. He gets hit a lot. He has virtually no defense, but it just never seems to bother him. And over a 12-round period, it just wears on the fighter who's beating him for the first half of the fight. This is the game plan with Austin Trout, and it happened last night again with Erislandy Lara. Did you check out that fight?
I did.
Yeah.
And he did not let Lara breathe.
He didn't.
That's one thing that, like you said, I mean, he broke him, I saw a defeated, tired, older Lara last night, and then you see a young, hungry lion that just wanted it
in the second half, right?
Yeah,
in
that
the second
just
half,
wanted it that much more. I haven't watched too many of Hurd's fights, but just from what I saw last night is just how bad he wanted it, and he wanted it more than Lara, you know.
I think that's exactly how he beat Austin Trout. The fight went the same way.
Yeah, I did see that
Yeah,
fight too,
he just wore him down, and Austin Trout was a superior boxer, certainly in terms of technique, and he just couldn't last the whole 12 rounds of that relentless pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as a coach and a matchmaker, I have a question about this.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think this is an unhealthy style of boxing because inevitably you will come across someone who you cannot walk through for 6 rounds. If that is a Canelo Alvarez or a Triple G, I mean, he's a junior middleweight, so these aren't guys who are far off. There are people that can hit you and hurt you. Not everybody you can't just shake all their punches. Now, I'm not saying Lara throws weak punches. They're super clean and good-looking punches, extremely effective, but there are certainly fighters who hit harder than Lara does.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when those guys come around?
You're in trouble is what happens.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing
you
else.
just lose, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, stylistically,
Like
that's what he brings to the table, and
Yeah.
he's going to be able to get through a lot of guys, obviously, based on that, like he has.
Sure.
But yeah, as far as health, that's not healthy to fight that way. But I think he probably realizes and understands that he's fighting for the fans, and he's fighting for his city, or what,
Yeah.
and for the paycheck, obviously, and to become a champion. And that's going to that kind of like hits something else as far as styles with fights, and that's I mean, if you're contending for the title or defending your title or what have you, I mean, I want to see guys as a fan go out there and go for broke. I hate watching a fight where the last 2 championship rounds they're running around the ring. We all know of some fighters that have done that in the past, and I'm frankly not really impressed by that. Hurd, it was a close fight, and he wanted it that much more, and he went out there and did whatever he had to do to seal the deal in the fight. Now, as far as being smart, going back to that, it's not, but I mean, this is a fan sport. I mean,
it's working.
This is a very dangerous sport, like we all know, and these fighters put their lives and their health on the line, and stylistically, going back to his style, that's his style.
But he is a young man, and he can learn some defensive things as well, right? He could pick up some head movement and some just to not take so many shots through that first 6. Like, you don't want to be punished through 6 rounds. Like, you just you want to apply pressure, but also try not to get hit rather than not caring.
Well, I didn't see the fight, unfortunately, but I did see a few highlights and read some comments, and and I know Lara's style is always like moving,
right?
But I heard he fought a little bit different. I heard
he had no choice.
Was it the pressure that
he had to
really
sit and exchange and things of that nature? But I mean, it didn't look like the normal Lara,
But he still put up a pretty good fight.
He did.
So it was close, though, too.
It was very close. I think we both had the same score. Maybe not the same round distribution, but on my scorecard, going into the last round, Hurd would have had to win that round to draw.
Really? That's exactly how I had it.
So he would have had to win round 12 just to draw. But in the last 30 seconds of round 12, he dropped Lara.
Okay.
And as a result, not only he ended up with a 1-point victory. Yeah, and that's how I think all 3 judges had it.
I agreed with that.
Yeah, all 3 judges had it that way.
Wow. So that was a pretty good fight. I missed that.
It actually, as far as those fights go, a lot of people are down on Lara, and you could tell it's kind of hard to sell. They were at the Hard Rock, and it's not a very big venue. There's not a lot of people in there and stuff like that. As far as Lara fights go, it was extremely entertaining. I would watch it again. It's just, in terms of, you hear in boxing, a lot of times people say it was a war of attrition. That's Jarrett Hurd, the definition. That's exactly how he wins fights. And it's, sometimes interesting to watch.
Well, that's it's good matchmaking too for Hurd, because what's the guy he fought before this guy?
Austin Trout?
Yeah, Austin Trout has been suspect in several fights, like his recent fights, and then Lara's getting a little bit. I think his tires are running thin, so he's getting old. So Hurd will be a good opponent for some of the other guys.
Charlo or one of those guys.
Some of those hard hitters with good boxing that are young, that are ready to take those titles.
Yeah.
It's good matchmaking, I think. It sets him up to be set up for some other guys, is what I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because Trout hasn't fought a lot in the last 3-4 years, and he hasn't been impressive either. I think he's won a few, but he hasn't been impressive.
Yeah, it was the same type of fight, only he put Trout away earlier.
Yeah.
So basically, Trout was, a better boxing movement, looked clean early on, succumbed to the pressure, and after a while just couldn't stand.
But he was significantly taller and bigger than
Hurd?
Yeah,
he's a big
big
dude.
guy.
He had a 3-inch reach advantage over Erislandy Lara.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Kind of look like a different weight class.
He does.
He made it seem like
he looks huge compared to Lara.
he did look pretty darn big. But I recall the same night weigh-ins that Lara weighed more than Hurd. Did you see that, or am I mixing them up? Because I could have sworn
that could be true.
The same night, the day after weigh-ins, Lara was a few pounds heavier.
The
than
unofficial.
Hurd. The unofficial next day weigh-ins, but watching the fight, you're like, dang. I mean,
they don't look
might have hollow bones or something,
it's
man.
Weird how some guys carry the weight.
It is
different
very
than other
weird.
Guys, I mean, as a coach, I like to take pride that I could spot somebody and figure out exactly what weight they are, But a few times you're off, and it's just some people carry their weight, maybe in their legs and their arms. And it's just yeah. But hey, what was the undercard? The Mora fight, was that on that?
It was an untelevised undercard.
Okay.
So Sergio Mora and Alfredo Angulo mixed it up last night on the untelevised undercard of the Lara and Hurd fight. That's right.
Okay.
So those are some popular names. That was also a controversial decision.
Yeah, I can guess why that didn't make television. that had been.
You don't think so?
No comment. Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Their names.
Yeah, their names.
Their names.
Sometimes in boxing with these fights, especially like Angulo or like a Margarito fighting in Mexico against I can't remember who he fought, but sometimes they give these guys fights just to give them one more payday.
Yeah.
That's I think that's what that was right there.
I mean, both these guys are names. I feel like, if they had televised it on ESPN or something, I would have watched it. It's not like
I think that's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, but how is that? I don't see that being a payday. I see that fight, that particular matchup being
that's like whose career continues.
Who can leave with a green on their record, with a win?
Yeah.
Who can
The retirement
walk away
victory.
with a
yeah, that's definitely a retirement.
on a
fight,
matchmaking side. That's kind of like what it seems to me, because I mean, essentially that fight really doesn't make too much sense other than, all right, which guy will, get out on a win, or they're trying to line him up for another, I was going to say loss, but another bigger fight. So
these guys aren't in the same weight class as Victor Ortiz and Alexander, right?
They should be close.
Okay.
Yeah, they should be close.
It'd be good to match those guys up.
I mean, Angulo was, I don't know what weight they fought at, but Angulo was 154 before, because he fought Erislandy Lara at 154, I think.
I think Victor Ortiz is welterweight.
Victor Ortiz
47.
was 147, when he fought in his last fight. But
he looked good, actually. Victor Ortiz?
Yeah.
Was it the last fight or the fight before? I was impressed.
Yeah, it was good. It was good versus Devin Alexander. That's who.
Was that?
That was the last fight. They fought to a draw.
that was a draw, yeah.
Even though I think Devin
You think he won?
pulled it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Still a good fight, but yeah, I'd love to see. Man, I wish I could control all the boxing fights, because then you'd get to put some good matchups, especially with the guys that are kind of at the tail end of their career, or redemption fights, or just like a Moro versus Ortiz would be a good one.
Well, this is the man to talk to.
Yeah,
can
can you call?
Can we make it happen?
I'll call him right now. I mean, the awesome part about being a matchmaker, though, on the local Southern California side of things, with Roy at least, is being able to do just that, but on the lower level. Watching these kids grow and hear about all their backgrounds with their trainers and how they were Golden Gloves or they were a national champ or Junior Olympic or what have you, and you get to see the growth, and you are a part of essentially the beginning stages. You know,
Yeah.
like Ryan Garcia we were talking about earlier. Pro debuted him here in the U.S. in L.A., and I actually matched that fight on 3 days' notice. We brought a kid from Puerto Rico over, and it was like a week after Ryan Garcia turned
I
18.
think I remember that. Was that the guy that was talking a lot of smack
And
in the
flicking
ring?
him off,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Okay.
Well, at the weigh-ins, it was actually interesting because at the weigh-ins, the Puerto Rican kid actually looked pretty big,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and he was mean mugging Ryan the entire time, and Ryan is now becoming a household name, so everybody knows he's a talker and he's a nice kid, real flamboyant and everything. But anyways, he was being himself at the weigh-ins, and when they were face to face, this Puerto Rican kid, was flicking him off in his face, and saying stuff to him, and as a matchmaker, I look at things like that to see if it will rattle the other guy's cage up
Yeah.
front, right? And I saw nothing but composure, and out of Ryan Garcia, who just turned 18 a week ago, fighting for the first time in the U.S., and that was something I felt was pretty awesome and interesting to see, because you look at things like that, right? I mean, some guys that'll affect them in the fight. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
guys, not want to come out of the locker room to go out to their fight on their pro debuts because they're so scared, right? So I've seen it all, but going back to the matchmaking side, it's so cool to be able to put this guy from this gym and this guy from this gym and kind of know their background and history, and be able to see them grow, or not grow, I should say. I mean,
Yeah.
it just depends, but I would love to be able to be a part of matching some of those big time historical fights, and giving the fans what they want to see.
Yeah, I have a question about that because, when we talk about making these, like you talk about making Victor Ortiz and Devin Alexander, it's a little bit easier because as a boxing fan, we know who they are, we see them on TV, we get to do it. So when you're making matches locally for people who are earlier in their career perhaps than a Devin Alexander, people who have been televised on HBO and ESPN, how do you go about researching the fighters, or how do you determine if that match is good? What criteria do you use to say this guy and this guy? Because there may not be as many clips or video footage or whatever you want to say.
Really, I don't go off of any footage at all.
Okay.
It's, for example, if a guy is already pro, both guys are pro, I can, their box rec, which a lot of people go off of, or their boxing history or background really tells the story to me. A lot of the times, most
Okay.
of the times, actually, I can literally look at who the fighters fought, where they fought, who were the judges, and gauge where this kind of this fighter kind of is. But also, I talk to the trainers, and I get a better idea of what kind of style they have, and based on their style and the research that I do, which is very little, but it's enough that tells the story.
What about debuts, though? You have to go off the
Those
the
guys are a
word?
little bit different. I do have to go off the word.
Because they could have like
Here's
100 amateur fights and say, "Oh, we got 10,
A lot of the times-
10." I'd do that. I would do that.
Well, I know, but here's the other kicker though. When you're filling out all of your paperwork to go pro, right? You know this with the California Athletic State Commission, at least. You have to fill in all those blanks, right? How many amateur fights did you have? How many wins did you have? How many wins by knockout did you have? How many losses? So, unless they lie on that, because that's another thing I look at.
There's no way for the commission to verify or spend time to look into
True.
into those books, because what happens is the amateurs, they have their passbook and the fights get put
Or a
they're-
few.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
what I
a
was gonna
few.
say.
And not only take
Yeah,
a couple out.
They
Yeah.
have so many fights that they fill up one book and they get a new book.
But
you
if
know?
a fighter was that significant, and let's say they had
Yeah.
over 100 fights, you're going to Google them. You're going to find them at the national level,
Yeah,
what
you
have
would know
you.
who they are. That's
If they
true.
have 100 fights and they've never fought at a national level, I don't understand that to begin with.
Yeah.
But typically, right, those guys are fighting on
Yeah.
the big stages. So anybody nowadays, first of all, everybody is Googling, right? So
Yeah.
I'm fighting Anthony Joshua. Okay,
First thing
Anthony
you do,
Joshua.
yeah.
Holy shit! Oh shoot! I got this name and this video. Oh my god! Oh, I don't want to take that fight. So a lot of these guys are doing their homework as well.
Yeah.
They do more homework than I do, actually, a lot of the times.
Do you find that that a lot of the boxers, and I don't want to call them scared because boxing is, you know, that nobody's scared who's getting in the ring, but doesn't it seem like sometimes they're like, I don't want to fight that guy. He might be too tough, and you're like, come on, he's not that. You know, do you have to convince these guys to take some of these fights?
Sometimes I do, and rightfully so, and it's the truth. So, it could be a number of different things. For example, if it's an older guy, I'll be like, hey man, the guy's 35 years old. He's only got 2 pro fights. Really, are you gonna?
Yeah.
And he's been pro for 5 years with 2 pro fights, and you're gonna be scared of the guy because he's got a mean tattoo on his face, or who knows what, right? I mean, they go and look him up on Instagram and see him flexing, and that guy's too strong for me. He's too big.
Yeah.
But he's 35 years old and he's been pro for 5 years and only has 2 pro fights. All right, maybe you're right. So yeah, I'm just giving you an example, but yeah, it happens all the time. Where guys, whatever the case may be, they won't want to take the fight, and I do have to convince them sometimes. But it's not a matter of lying. I'm not lying. I'm stating facts, right? So
it's got to be very difficult for you to, put on a lot of these matches early on in the careers of these fighters because they're being very cautious. Everybody wants to have that 0 on their record as long as possible. I don't think it's a myth, but everybody says, oh, you get to 5-0, you get to 10-0, and Golden Boy's going to call you and sign you up.
That's not true.
Well, it's not true.
Yeah.
But I almost feel
they still feel that way.
Yeah.
People out there still feel that way, and that's not true.
But I feel like these guys, everybody says that in the gyms, I've heard that for years. And I almost feel like they buy into that, so then they don't want to fight anybody that poses any kind of risk. They want a complete pushover,
Yeah.
And that's got to make your job difficult to because you want to put competitive fights on for the promoter and for the fan. Yeah, right.
The promoter and the fans, most importantly.
Yeah.
First of all, you can't put, like we were talking earlier about Mexico fights, right? They're now in Tijuana, at least from my understanding, what I've been advised, those fighters have to have a minimum of 20 amateur fights before they can even go pro now. Whether they do that in 30 days, they fight 20 times in 30 days, which I've heard sometimes they'll do that too, just to get their pro card so that they can make a check over there. But, the California Athletic State Commission does a fairly good job on approving fights and not approving fights. So like I was saying earlier, I have a grade scoring system on how I grade fights, and if they will even be approved by Andy Foster.
It's like a number, right? It's like a number 4. If they're a 4 or 5, they're
4 or 5s
really
are
bad,
extremely hard. Like I've had to type up long emails to explain why this fighter should still be able to fight. Sometimes I get them approved when they were rejected, and sometimes Andy Foster continues to reject them. Which rightfully so. Maybe he saw something in the last fight. Like, for example, I've had a guy where he's like, the guy has a winning record, but yet the last fight, Andy Foster so happened to be at the fight, and the guy did a face plant from a KO and went to the hospital and was in the hospital for a week. I didn't know that, but Andy Foster did, so he doesn't want him to ever fight again in California. See, so there's other things. There's a lot of stipulations and other things that, can happen.
Yeah, and then when a guy starts going on a losing streak or a bad record, they send him back to Mexico to get a W.
You can offset fights like that, yeah.
Right?
To get in the green, I like to call it, yeah.
But how do you explain? God, I don't want to mention his name, but how do you explain the fighter that's like 3-18 and still fighting?
How do you explain it? Well,
and still fighting in California, because I've talked with Andy before, you know, and. Had to convince him to give this guy a fight. He hasn't been knocked out, and these are decision losses, and and they're giving us a hard time when it's only a few losses, and then a month later I see, I want to say his name, but
well, I'll tell you this. I was at StubHub, and I mentioned this on the podcast before. This is true. I was at StubHub Center in Carson watching an untelevised undercard, and one of the cats who was on there was like 3-22. And he was stopped in the second round because he wasn't punching. So it's not like he literally wasn't throwing punches. The referee told him a number of times, you have to punch or we're going to stop. And then he just stopped the fight. That guy has fought 25 times and has probably fought again since then, right? So, like, How
Most
does
of
that
those guys
happen?
aren't approved any longer.
Right.
However, I probably know who you're talking about, and there are some guys that are still with lopsided records that are able to compete and fight. Now, the reason why is because they've shown that they are able to compete at that level as a professional, right? Whether it could be they've never been knocked out, even though they've got such a lopsided record. But if you look, they've been breaking off rounds with these pros, these elite pros who, are undefeated prospects and things of that nature. So, yeah, I agree. There is at some point you're like, all right, man, you got to cut them off. But if they're still game and they're still fighting and they're still breaking rounds or getting a draw here and there, then,
And
they let them go.
And are these types of fighters? I mean, at this point, not at this point, but always they're kind of a necessary evil of boxing. There's a lot of promoters putting on shows, so
It's very saturated now.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
how I like to say it here
Yeah,
in Southern California and LA.
yeah,
I
especially
mean,
here, right? We're
you've
kind
got
of
a
Mecca,
lot.
so
Yeah, I mean, so you go like San Diego doesn't have anything. And then you've got Orange County Fight Club OC, Roy Englebrecht Promotions. But yeah, mainly it's here in LA, and there's a lot of shows. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of shows in LA. So what's happening is it's kind of taking up what I like to call the opponent pool. In a
yeah. There's
sense,
only so
right?
many boxers.
Right, so there's only so many boxers in so many different weight classes,
Yeah.
and there's only so much you can do. Now, I was matching for Al Heyman in 2015 when he had all of his fighters at Fight Club OC. They used to have, man, there was a show that I matched 14. We had 14 fights on the show,
Jeez.
and it was I think we got it at like midnight.
one?
Yeah, midnight.
That's crazy.
But anyways, what I'm getting at here is Heyman used to pay the best in 2015. I like to call it the Heyman train. Everybody was hopping on. Everybody wanted to get signed. They were signing a lot of people. If you had any significant value as an amateur, they would sign you just because they didn't want Golden Boy or somebody else to sign them, right? Now, what happened there is they were raising the bar for Golden Boy for top rank. They were overpaying opponents. So everybody wanted, even if they knew that they were going to lose, they wanted to fight a Heyman fighter because they knew that they would be making more
paid well.
with them than any other promoter, right? So thankfully everything's leveled off, and it's gone back to normal. But in 2015 they raised the bar on everything. They paid matchmaking fees the best, they paid the opponents the best, they paid their fighters the best. But now they've they're all their guys are fighting each other, they're weeding guys out, they're not signing obviously like they used to. But again, everything's kind of back to normal. But you got to also remember too, at a club show level like Roy or Ed Holmes, it's kind of like a flat standard rate that the promoter pays. They can't pay as much as a top rank fighter, for example, because it's different, and yeah, so it's tough at times, because you're also, as a matchmaker, I'm having to fight, or not fight, but match within a budget, and it's a very low budget, and but it's a traditional budget that traditional club show promoters, that's what they pay. But yeah, it's getting tough, man. There's definitely times. I had this kid, so we had a show last week, and I had a 112-pound kid came up to me, and bless his heart, man. He literally told me, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm better than anybody else here that fought tonight." He's I would probably say he's 18 years old, little kid, 112-pound fighter, and 112 pounds is really hard to come by.
Yeah,
Sure.
And he's like, "Man, I am better than anybody else that fought here tonight. I will put up a better show than anybody else. Please put me on your next show." And I'm like, it's hard.
Yeah.
I just can't. It's not as easy as it sounds. Same with female fighters. I've had local female fighters that want to come on the show, but there are only so limited and few female fighters. You literally have to fly somebody in or pull them in from out of the country, and the club show promoter is not going to pay for that. So
even though
You
female
have to-
boxing's at probably the highest point that it's ever been right now, right? I mean, there's still not that many, especially professionals.
Marlon Esparza, right? Golden Boy fighter, and then Kenya Enriquez. She's the WBC champ right now. She's just in TJ. She needs to come over here and fight either Marlon or Sinisa. That will be, speaking of female fighting coming up, that would be the fight.
But what's interesting with the female boxing? ascend to championship status like within 8 fights, 10 fights. They
Yeah,
get belts
that's-
like
with-
pretty quick.
That's because the field is
Yeah.
far smaller.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like the flyweights, those guys.
Yeah,
you
those
know,
guys,
the
same thing.
straw weights.
Yeah. Even people like Lomachenko, he fought for a title in his second fight.
Yeah, but
Oh,
Right.
he almost broke history by. I mean, that
Yeah,
was
like-
just.
But I mean, at the lower weights in general, the lower it is, the easier it is to. No, I shouldn't say easier. That makes it sound like those fighters aren't as competitive. But that's not what I mean. I just mean the field is so much smaller at the lower weight
Well,
classes.
I feel like Lomachenko got. It's because his amateur background and the
Sure.
gold medals, you know, and they wanted to capitalize on that right away. And then I don't know how old he is, but I don't think.
30.
Yeah, he's not that young, you know.
Yeah.
Well, he's been boxing pro now, what, like 6 years, I think?
No, just a few
Less than
years, I
that?
think.
Yeah, less than that.
Oh, wow.
He's the greatest amateur fighter of all time.
Speaking, I saw you advise some fighters as well, right?
Yeah. So
And-
we actually had sparring with
Yeah,
Lomachenko.
I saw that on the Facebook page.
Which one of your fighters?
Max Becerra.
Okay.
So they wanted simulated sparring for Jorge Linares, and Max is tall, skinny, lengthy, pressure boxer, puncher.
Is he fast?
He's pretty quick.
Is he fast
yeah.
as Linares?
Yeah, no, he's quick. But I saw things that I've never witnessed in sparring before, coming from
Really?
Lomachenko. Yeah, I mean that
Yeah.
guy is just. Yeah, best of luck to Linares. I'm a fan of his as well.
Okay.
But yeah,
Wow.
how do you find sparring? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just find a Lomachenko laying around the gym
Yeah.
or anywhere around. I mean, literally, I've been in a ton of gyms and I've seen all kinds of fights and all kinds of sparring, and I don't know how they're going to simulate what Lomachenko brings to the table.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
hard to get sparring partners
Oh, yeah, man.
that are the best in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, but
Li-
his
Linar-
angles and the punches he throws and the way he does things is just like it's just so crazy. He's like on another planet, man. you
Yeah,
know?
Linares also just changed trainers, like
Ooh.
just a few weeks ago. So he parted
he?
ways with his head trainer. Yeah, so he has a totally new trainer for Lomachenko, which is
Do you know who his sparring partners are? Because they better. I mean, he's
I don't
gonna.
know.
Best of luck to him.
he didn't look fantastic in his last fight either. Did you
Well,
watch Linares' last fight?
no, but-
I love watching his training videos. He
Yeah,
always
me
looks great
too.
in training, but
Yeah,
he
he's
didn't
the
look
best
great
on-
in his
He's
last.
the best on the pads and the body
And the
pad.
speed back.
Yeah. But somebody mentioned something. I read all the comments on everything, but he throws a lot of punches to the body, but very few are significant. I mean, he'll throw like a 10-punch combination to the body. The guy's still standing in front of him.
Yeah.
You know, so I was thinking about that, and that's true. I mean, he can throw all the fast punches he wants, but if they're not effective, then
Yeah.
he's gonna. I mean, but everybody has a hard time with Lomachenko, so.
But that's got to
We'll see
bring
what happens.
your fighter's IQ and
Oh, hell
talent
yeah.
level. I mean, getting to work with the best in the world is. I
I'm
mean, what
telling
else
you.
could you ask for?
So, with all due respect to my guy Max, he even said after sparring, he's like, that's the most mentally draining sparring he's ever been in his entire life. The reason for that is because Lomachenko's always in your space. There's no time to set or get set or
Yeah.
and he said your mind is just going a million miles an hour because there's so much going on. And again, you can't set, there's no comfort in there at all. Not to mention you're in like a phone booth ring too over there, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and he used to spar with Timothy Bradley, and he's been in there with a lot of top dogs, but he just said he's like I can see why Regendow quit. He goes because he broke him, and it's just mentally draining what he does, and you have to really be thinking. But yeah, to Max's IQ and just the things that he was in there seeing and being a part of is definitely going to make him better. That's why I
Yeah.
think it's good, for amateurs to spar with pros, and because that's going to step up
Yeah.
their game, right? I mean, the only reason why we stopped sparring, because we went 2 times, is because Max has a fight this week and he's fighting a right-handed fighter, not a lefty. So we more so did it for the opportunity and to get a couple sparring sessions in. Matter of fact, they want Max to go back. So if Max comes out clean and is healthy after this fight, he's going to go back into Lomachenko's camp for the remainder of the
Nice.
the training camp because they liked the simulated sparring, and yeah, it should be good for him. I mean, he feels like he's that much better just by experiencing 2 times. I mean, that says
even
something.
though it's mentally draining, it's got to be pretty damn exciting to be in there with the best.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask that also. So as a match, you're obviously we talked about the fights at the top. You're a fan of boxing. You watch it, right?
First and foremost.
Exactly, right? And we all are. So Lomachenko is basically, that's a celebrity to me. It is, right? Like, he's a celebrity to me. And so it's kind of like how much exposure do you need to the boxing world before you start being like, or I should say before you stop being like, wow, that's Lomachenko.
You know what I love about boxing is even though he's one of the greats. We're all like boxers. Everybody's in there sweaty.
Everybody's cool.
That's the one thing I like about it. It's like once if you bring in a guy that's sparring them, then you're part of that team, and you can get a little starstruck.
Yeah.
For sure, but that's the one thing I like about boxing is that once you're in the gym and everybody's training, we're all boxers.
We're all
in the
equal,
gym.
man.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. I don't know if you get that feeling when
I do
you
too.
go to
No,
the
we're
gym.
all equal. Like I don't feel like anybody is better than anybody else. For example, there's no need in walking around with your hand on your crotch or anything. We're all men. We're all here, and it's a good time, and everybody's helping each other out in some capacity.
I'm glad to hear you guys say. See, I never knew if it was just this gym or anything, but one of the things that kept me in boxing so long ago, when you first go to walk into a boxing gym, it can be kind of intimidating. So I don't know if you guys remember that experience, but I mean, for me, it was probably, something like 12 years ago or something like that at this point. But you go to walk in and you think that what you might encounter is a bunch of tough guys who have been doing this or going to, want to rough you up or give you a hard time. It was such the opposite of that. It took me walking into the gym, but as soon as you get in here, everybody's like extremely welcoming and helpful and stuff like that.
I think depends where you go.
It probably
Good
does.
point. It really depends where you go because I'm a white guy, bald head, tattoos, and there has been some gyms in the past
They're
years
not
where I
welcoming.
wasn't very welcome
until
they knew what I was there for, and I'm a matchmaker. Then it's like, oh, okay, hey, what's going on? But until then, it's like, what's up, home? What you doing in my gym, eh? Oh, man, hey.
And then some gyms got a lot of amateurs. Some gyms got only pros. Some gyms got really good pros. Some gyms got really good amateurs. So
it just depends on which one you walk into. I just got lucky.
You got lucky.
When I walked into
here.
Sweet Science in Hawthorne, California.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot about this gym. It's an awesome gym, and I've heard
awesome,
nothing but great things. So
yeah,
I'm glad to be here today.
Oh, thanks for coming. I hope I really hope we can make some noise in the pro game in the next couple of years. It's we've had the gym for 9 years, and it takes a long time to develop a good program, develop some amateurs, and boxing people come and go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with pros, you mentioned you're managing some or helping some fighters, and they come and go into your life, into your business, and then you're on to the next one. The same thing with the fighters here. They can come, they can go, but hopefully we'll be at Fight Club OC pretty soon.
Well, like I told you, some of the main things that the promoter looks for in order for me to be able to put guys on the show, ticket sales.
Yeah. That
That really drives your slot, on the card.
Yeah. What does a debuting boxer? I mean, what do you look for as a matchmaker or as a promoter in that 112-pound kid? Say he was at a more marketable weight or something that's easier to find. I mean, but what are you looking for? Is it all following? Do they have to have a big following?
No, they don't have to have like a big Instagram following or anything like that. But I mean, there is a requirement. I mean, you got to be able to sell minimum, anywhere from 40 to 60 tickets. Now, pro debut, that's a different story as well because there's a lot of medicals involved as well.
Yeah.
Typically, the club show promoters, they're not going to pay for fighter medicals. However, they will deduct from the fighter's purse. So typically, I believe all California meds are around $760 total to go pro, and then you have your licensing fee with the commission. So I mean, that's pretty much an entire fighter's
Well,
purse
yeah,
almost, right?
most debut fights, for the ones I've done, what guys get paid 800 to 1,000.
That's pretty standard.
Maybe 1,200 if you're lucky. Probably not though.
4-round fights are anywhere from 800
Yeah.
to 1,200.
Yeah, so
normally.
So if you have to come out of pocket to pay your medicals, your license.
So some guys, the trainers or their dads or a sponsor or what have you, will kind of get involved and will foot the bill for the medicals for that particular fighter. That's kind of like what happens. Some guys will just say, you know what, I don't have anybody, deduct it from my purse, and they end up fighting for a couple $100, you know.
And that's
pro debut is very hard
to
come by financially.
And that's why I tell people, like, if you haven't been signed by a promoter, if you don't have sponsors, if you don't have people that will back you with the money, and you're still young, stay in the amateurs and build up your reputation and become a elite national level boxer, an elite world-class amateur boxer. Otherwise, you're going to be coming out of pocket to fight, basically. And it's a long road, I think. Even that's why I say some of the best boxers in the world never even get seen. They never even make it, just because it is a financial commitment, right?
They don't sell enough tickets.
They don't sell enough tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, at the club show level, if you can sell 40 to 60 tickets, you're making your pro debut, you're good, because you got to remember, you're also making a commission on the ticket sales as well. So Fight Club OC Hangar, it's $15 commission per ticket sold. So do the math. I mean, that's a significant amount as well. So it drives the fighter to try to sell more tickets, or the trainer or the dad or whoever sponsors are involved. And I think, that's important, to kind of have that team working together.
I had a fighter sell like 50 tickets, and then his fighter didn't show up to the weigh-in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the worst, man.
Yeah. So how do you deal with stuff like that when fights fall? They fall out like 2 days before.
First of all, it happens all the time, right?
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
It's gotta drive you nuts.
I've been able to recover a fight on 1 day notice and make the fight happen the next day. It's rare, but it happens. Matching it on a day's notice or a few days' notice. But going back to that, if a fighter, for example, 2 years ago, I had a guy that it was an Al Heyman, or actually no, it wasn't an Al Heyman fighter. It was a normal local kid. We flew in a guy from Ohio. I'm not going to say names, but we flew the guy in from Ohio, which we normally wouldn't do. It was circumstances, and the other team paid for the flights, what have you, okay? So anyways, the guy flew in, took care of his medicals at Dr. Gluckman's, went back to his hotel. Next day were the weigh-ins. We're all at the weigh-ins. Fighter is not at the opponent is not at the weigh-ins. I'm calling the opponent. He's in his hotel room and will not come out of the room.
The guy that was flown in?
Yes.
No way.
Took care of all the medicals.
Wow.
Took care of his flights. He's been in the room for a couple days and would not come out of the hotel room. He said that he hurt his elbow that night, the night before or something. But yeah, things happen, right? I mean, I've heard it all. I mean, that was one of the situations that really didn't sit well with me, because I felt bad for the other side. They came out of pocket and they never recouped that money. They paid for his tickets and all that stuff. And as a matchmaker, people want to look at somebody whose fault is this, right? And so most of the time, everybody is like honed in on me. You had a good outing? Oh, thanks, Charles. You had a bad outing? Screw you, Charles. Or your opponent didn't show up? Screw you, Charles. So it's it's hard at times, because you deal with a lot of whiplash, and there's a lot of things that can happen, and it's not my fault. If it were me, I would go drag the guy out of the hotel and throw him on the scale,
Well,
but
I almost feel like matchmaker's the hardest job in the business of boxing, and that he's also the most unknown part of the promotions of boxing, especially to the not average fan, but like the mainstream fan. They have no idea that matchmaker even exists.
Yeah, they know.
There's a lot of background going on.
Because they know a lot of times the promoter, they know a lot of times the fighter's manager. Particularly now, they're sort of becoming more prominent with Al Heyman and stuff like that. They know a lot of that stuff, but I would say probably not the matchmaker most of the time.
Yeah, but if you don't have a fight, right?
Yeah,
and you don't have
you
a
guys
show,
get all.
and
You guys
don't
need
have
to,
anything else happening.
You should be getting all the credit though. You make all the fights happen.
Yeah, it's a good and bad thing. Like I said, if you're put more in the limelight in that scenario, then you're also going to be getting that much more whiplash by,
True.
all those other people as well. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing like putting a good local fight together when I literally don't know who's going to win, and it's a good 50-50 fight, and literally sitting there and just watching it unfold in the ring, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's when I'm the biggest fan of boxing, and I just have so much respect for anybody that steps in the ring, whether it's, a guy with a lopsided record or whatever the case may be. If a guy comes and he shows up and he fights and he tries, and I mean, there's nothing, can't take anything away from those guys, so.
So in terms of local shows, and you had mentioned that you have a fighter fighting soon, I think on the 14th, is it?
2 guys are fighting on the 14th in Salinas, Pedro Marino and Max Becerra.
Cool. And if we wanted to check that out, where is it at?
You can go to Thompson. I think it's Thompson Boxing. Yeah, Thompson Boxing on Facebook. They do like a live feed for all their shows. Matter of fact, they have I think he was saying 150,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And all over the world, that are watching this live feed, and they do a really good job on not only the production, but they have commentating, and it's very, very professional. You would think you're watching ESPN. It's that good. Have you seen it?
I think I've seen the Thompson pretty recently.
They do a pretty darn good job,
I think I might have seen the last one, and I was thinking to myself, hey, this looks pretty good. I thought it was ESPN,
oh, yeah.
but
it looks very professional and legitimate. Yeah, so.
Well, that's what's great, that you can put a production together, and it's a local show, but now you can live stream it all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't need ESPN or CBS Sports to
True.
to back it.
Yeah.
Which is great.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't seen that live stream, the Thompson Boxing thing. I'll have to check that out.
They do a good job. I mean, Roy Englebrecht Promotions does it too. Fight Club OC, SoCa fights. But I mean, there's more financial things put into Thompson than as far as Roy. Roy does a good job at what he does too, utilizing what tools he has and he's capable of using, but it's still very professional. Yeah, as far as Thompson, they just have like a whole production team, and it's a little bit more. That's about it.
Well, we are.
Yeah, what time are we at?
We're at about 90 minutes.
No way.
Yeah. I told you, once you start talking boxing, it just
time
it
goes
just
by when you're having fun, man.
Yeah.
It just goes. Boxing,
It's easy to talk about boxing.
It's really easy, especially when you get a bunch of guys who watch boxing, and I feel like any one of us could probably talk about boxing all day long.
And
Pretty
watch
much.
it too.
Yeah,
My kids hate me because every weekend they know, Dad, we really have to watch this.
Is the fight on? Oh, damn, right?
Yeah, they're like, Dad, can we just watch a movie? Nope, hold on. We got 2 more fights to go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just in our blood, man.
Yeah.
I switched to a service that doesn't have DVR. I think it's hurting my family. No, like, we don't have DVR. The only chance I get to watch this is right now.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Gotta watch it live.
That's funny. Well, it brings me to what Conor McGregor said when he was fighting Floyd and doing the promotions. He says, "I am boxing," Yeah. But when he said that, I was like, "No, you're not. I'm boxing." But I think, we are boxing right here. Guys like you, matchmakers, promoters, cornermen, the cutmen that we see at all the fights, whether it be local or other states, they're all doing the same thing. We are boxing. I mean, we're training the guys. You're putting the matches together. So, I mean, it's...
I would say there's a lot more of this going on than there are Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor type events. I mean, the events that you guys are putting together, and that all the local stuff, the reason that we give it time is because these things are happening all the time, man. You guys are having to work out here.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys are having to put in work out here. So.
Yeah, but definitely much respect for all the work that you've done, and
appreciate
some recognition. Because I've been to some of those fights. They're pretty good. They're pretty good.
Appreciate that, man.
That's actually high praise for Marco. Anything is pretty good.
Yeah,
we
pretty good means great.
Just like my El Camino.
Pretty
Yeah.
good.
That's
yeah.
pretty good.
A few,
So is yours. Pretty good.
a few weeks ago.
Although you won the show and I didn't.
Yeah. I thought I was gonna lose. I was like, oh, this guy's showing up. I'm not gonna win anything.
A few weeks ago, we had an amateur who said his record was he had 99 fights and he was 90-9 was his record. And Marco goes, that's pretty good.
That's all
It's
right.
not bad. It's all right.
Could have been 92 and 6, a little bit
Yeah.
better. 92 and 7.
Yeah.
We're going to his gym. Actually, we got fights this coming weekend.
Oh, cool.
Saturday at Jackrabbit in Long Beach and Sunday at Century Sheriff's.
All right.
So our amateurs will be fighting. But
Nice.
yeah, so I think that's the end of our podcast, right?
Right on.
We're at the tail end.
We're at the tail end.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Shout out time.
Yeah. Go for it, man. I defer.
All right. I definitely want to give a shout out to the referee from the Joshua Parker fight. I think his name was like Giuseppe or something.
Giuseppe,
some
man.
Italian guy.
Giuseppe.
And
I hope to see him more often.
yeah, I kind of feel bad because he was catching a lot of shit.
He deserved it.
Yeah, he was jumping in, breaking the action like right before they were getting right. Like every time he'd like jump right in. I think Joshua would like swing an uppercut and he'd be like, oh, he'd break it. He caught a lot of shit, but hopefully he's doing okay. And I'm sure he was nervous. It had been the biggest fight of his career. But big shout out to Giuseppe from Italy, the referee for the Parker Joshua fight. Good job. Keep trying. Get better on the next one.
Yep, there you go.
Shout out to all of the YouTubers who made our last episode, our #1 episode so far.
All right.
And I'm sure that this one will top that. But I appreciate everyone who takes the time to sit down and watch the show. So especially because that was just me and you.
Yeah.
So, it's just me and you talking. So
We're getting popular.
yeah, we're
Everyone.
gonna pop it. So for sure, this one's gonna go up because you're on here too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Any shout outs, Charles?
I guess the biggest shout out would be to all the local fighters and kids that are struggling and, you know, that are looking for the opportunity to, whether it go pro or go amateur or what have you. You know, you don't have to, you know, if you're in a struggle and you're a kid, you don't have to have this dream of going pro, you know, to get out of the neighborhood or get out of trouble and, you know, things of that nature. It's just a matter of being you and, you know, competing to the fullest, whether it's in the boxing gym or in school or family or what have you, but just doing the right things, you know. And if you end up going pro, then, you know, contact the trainers, contact me, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool.
It's my shout out to the kids, the community.
All right.
Perfect. The best one yet.
Yeah.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Chris?
Thank
you
you for
guys.
being with us this evening. I know you had to travel quite a distance. We appreciate your coming out.
It's all good.
All
Glad
right,
to be
man.
here.
Signing off.
All right.
Later, guys.
All right.
Nice.